we've heard about Tony Blair there, the former, obviously, UK Prime Minister who led us into Iraq. He says that he still is confident it was the right decision to do and to commit those troops to war in Iraq.
I think if we'd backed off and we'd left him in power, you just imagine with what is happening in Syria now, if you'd left Saddam in charge of Iraq, you'd have had carnage on an even worse scale in Syria and with no end in sight. So, this was the most difficult decision I ever took and the most balanced decision. But I still believe we were better to remove him than leave him.
Joining us now is Godfrey Bloom. He's a UKIP member of European Parliament for Yorkshire and the Humber region, first elected in 2004. Godfrey, you voted against the Iraq invasion.
Yes, UKIP were against this from the very beginning, largely because we took a fairly strategic view. I'm a graduate of the Royal College of Defence Studies, and my dissertation was actually on war aims. Very, very few wars are worth fighting. Very, very few. And this was another one on them. If you're going to interfere, if you're going to attack another country, you have to have a very significant and plausible exit strategy and a very specific war aim. And of course we had neither of those things. The
war aim was to remove Saddam Hussein, wasn't it?
Well, no, not really. We were told there were weapons of mass distraction, and he presented a threat with those weapons of mass destruction, and we were under the impression that he had these things, as indeed were most of the leaders of Western Europe, and indeed not just the Republicans in the White House, but also the Democrats, if you look at the way the speeches that they made, and John Kerry, and the way they voted. So this is what the impression we were under, but we didn't actually really believe it, but I wouldn't. And I think Professor Rogers was quite right there. I think Tony Blair believed legitimately there were weapons of mass destruction, so the war was not in fact to remove Saddam Hussein. That is not what we were told at the time.
OK, he's made the analogy of President Assad, what's happening in Syria at the moment. He said that it would be even worse than what he's done to himself. You only need to look back at the accusations and what is effectively proven of the way he treated his own people, such as using mustard and nerve gas in the Halabja massacre, killing hundreds to thousands of Kurdish Iraqis. Should a man like that be left to get on with that then?
He is an appalling and was an appalling man, and let me say now, I was glad they hanged him. Make no mistake about that. But where Tony Blair gets it wrong, and I think he's been getting this part of the world consistently wrong, Syria was a secular state, and Assad is not a nice man either. But in Syria, for example, up until this civil war, which the West and the CIA have helped to ferment, you could pray if you were Jewish, if you were Christians, if you were Sunni Muslims, if you were Shia Muslims. It was a secular society, and the question one has to ask oneself now, is Syria better off now than it was 5 years ago? And of course the answer is no, it isn't. It's chaos, and now we've even got a lunatic Home Secretary in Hague suggesting that we arm the insurgents. I mean, what Syria doesn't need now is for the West to put arms into it. It's a complete nightmare scenario, largely of which is made by the CIA and the State Department of the United States, which we seem to blindly follow. We didn't do any homework, and it was interesting that Professor Rogers there said that we were not welcomed, the Allied forces were not welcome, but of course anybody with a history book could tell you, if you look back to the 1920s and the insurgency in Iraq in those days, the Shias and the Sunnis and the Kurds, all who hate each other's guts, all come together when the infidel comes up the high street.
Okay, well,
so let's read some history books here.
Okay, well, Tony Blair says he made the decision with the available intelligence. You think he made a huge mistake for that. Should he be held accountable for that?
Well, I think I probably agree with Professor Rogers insofar as he made this mistake in good faith. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. UKIP got it right, as we get so many things right, but in hindsight, it's always easy. He made that call. He was the Prime Minister. He had to make a call, a judgment call. I think he made the wrong call, but if you're going to go back through history, grabbing everybody who made a wrong call in good faith, you'd have quite a lineup, wouldn't you?
OK, Godfrey, good to talk to you this afternoon.